engaging in another Tactical Tuesday. This session was a little long. We split the first session up into rules questions, scenarios, situations, things like that, changes we made from the last game. Then we go on to play the Clash of Borosovka. If you simply only want to see the Clash of Borosovka with the armor, that's this part 2 of this week's episode. Part 1 is simply the rules discussions. Simply because they were really distinct and separate, I decided to make the cuts here. Introducing here are very subtle things that you will likely miss in your games of ASL or SK. The first one is obvious. John points it out during this week. He looks at the charts and say, hey, this is what you need to look at. The other things are routing. Of course, routing always rears its ugly head. We cover the routing, a certain routing situation that is very difficult, but yet legal to perform. Next, we cover usage of smoke and when you can and cannot fire on units when they drop smoke. And lastly, conditions of defensive fire on units. Each of these topics, very important in your ASL game. Routing, moving, firing, and AFB destruction. Very key concepts, all perfect questions for our SK group. Very good questions, guys. Let's join in and learn some SK. John's got a very, very interesting strategical perspective that he located during the week, and I think it's very key because that's a keen eye to point that out, and that just kind of goes to show you that ASL, SK, and ASL are both
that they really want.
Games of details and noticing the little stuff, and this is a big thing and can affect your gameplay. Again, it's very similar to looking at things on the backs of your counters. If you don't notice your tanks have smoke and you have a difficult time crossing clear terrain or wherever you want to go, then that's just a small little detail that was overlooked. Welcome again to another Tactical Tuesday. Thank you guys for showing up again. I think this is going to be another good session. I think my tanks will probably be eliminated this turn, but that's beside the point. Just because it's on the top of my head, we're gonna bounce back. I had 3 or 4 other things to bounce back, but just because John's here and I want John. Oh yeah. I've got the map popped up, and so on the video, I've got some on those charts. Who got those charts that I sent out? Did everyone either have them up or printed them out or what have you?
Yes, both.
Okay, because I essentially condensed some of the charts to only focus on essentially our vehicles. To be honest with you, pretty much all the hit tables are exactly the same. There's slight variations, but SK has gone to the extent to essentially do each armament separately. It's for an ASLer going to the ASK charts, it looks very cumbersome, and I have actually difficulty in meandering through the charts, and the charts will change, gentlemen. If you have memorized the starter kit 2 charts, if you have memorized what number 18 or 19 does or whatever like that, it will be different in starter kit 3. It will be a different value. So if someone says, oh, that's case 19, it will likely be a different value in starter kit 3. I really don't like that because a lot of people have memorized case A, case K, you know, all this other cases. As you play, you'll start memorizing what the numbers mean. So if you start out with I don't know how often they're going to change it as they add more and more rules to the starter kit system, but that I really don't like changing the reference numbers on a chart when you get used to them. Map off, so we've got the map popped up here, looks good. And so in terms of, do you guys remember Jim's shot last week? If you weren't here last week, if you watched the video, Jim took a shot on the Mark, the Panzer IV in the back on Mark's tank A. The acquisition is in Y2. He decided to use the APCR ammo, and Mark, being as bright as he is in the SK world, and very, very, very familiar with the chart, says that is a -1 to hit. Which, because APCR kind of like, I guess the round just drops, it's heavier. I don't know what the physics of it. It's less accurate at longer range, period. You know, you guys probably know more about that than me. So it made it to hit a 4, correct? And the depletion number was 5. But other than just looking at the hit, let me pop up this chart. Let's look up the to kill charts. Look at your to kill table at the range of 13 to 18, because that's where our target is. I think it's a 17 hex range. And tell me the difference between the APCR ammo and the AP ammo of the Russian 76.
Oh, I hadn't even noticed that before. Yeah, it's identical.
It's identical. Yeah, so John pointed that out, and I know it's like, holy crap, there's absolutely 0 point in firing the APCR, right? And
at long range, yeah.
And so unless you're 12 hexes or shorter, I honestly don't see a point in firing the APCR. He rolled a 5, and that would have hit the armor piercing round. But even if I don't know why you would choose a special ammo type that's depletable, which is better at shorter range, and risk it at an equivalent type of to kill. I just don't know when that would come into play. Because you're never going to run out of AP ammo. It's not like you have an AP. Well, typically, most vehicles do not run out of AP ammo. You know, your SP guns that are high explosive, they might have like an AP7, which again, you'll have to check your armor types, because like your 150 millimeter guns, they probably don't have a lot of AP on hand. They just blow stuff up just by sheer explosive value. So that is a really huge detail that we missed last week in terms of, should I risk that shot at a detriment to the to hit where it gives us nothing? You know, had we known that, the choice would have been simple, right? And so we would have just taken the AP shot, and this can make a difference in your games. Noticing that little detail can win or lose you a particular scenario. Let's say I wanted to rush all my infantry across here, and he's got that Panzer IV covering it pretty well. He's going to blow everything away. Well, if I took that shot last week, and now my infantry can't move because he's going to blast them, had I been aware of that, then we could have at least gotten a hit on him and tried to destroy him. So the little details, even though, you know, theoretically it's better to hit, better to kill, short range only, gentlemen. And that's just a detail in the chart. And obviously the APCR for the 75 continues to grow, and the 88 continues to grow, is always exceeding the AP to kill number. But this Russian 76L, Garbo, it just falls off after 13 to 8. Well, 13 to 18 is the same, so you actually wouldn't even use it at that range unless there's something I'm just simply missing here. So therefore, its value is not as good. So very interesting detail that John picked up at. You know, congrats on him. Sharp eye, looking at the details, stretching it out, and that's what you have to do in your games. And that's kind of why I laboriously went over the vehicular guns and the counters at the beginning scenario. It's important to note all the information that's on your counters and what your vehicles are capable or not capable of doing. So if you play the Americans a lot or play the Germans a lot, you might get spoiled in having smoke dischargers. You might get spoiled in having just smoke rounds. You deal with some of these other nationalities, these Allied miners, Axis miners, Russians, you know, French, whatever. They do not have the same supply capabilities as all these other nations. And so it's important to check the details of your vehicles. And that just goes to show it's another important fact. Another thing in terms of vulnerabilities. Just a strategic note right now. I'll turn the to kill chart off. In terms of vulnerabilities, go ahead and look at your to kill table again, and look at your HE and flame to kill table. It's on the same thing, upper right. It's in the red box. All right, I created a red box because those are the calibers of weapons that we're dealing with. 70 and 80 plus. So that's the to kill number of the HE on a vehicle. Now, how effective is high explosive? If I were to fire a high explosive shell at, let's say, a Panzer IV, what would I need to kill it in a frontal shot?
Need to roll a 1.
Roll a 1. Can someone tell me why I would? Okay, so let's flip it to this. So we really can't kill it that well. Let's go to the Tiger tank, and this is where it applies. What would we need to kill the Tiger tank on a high explosive roll? Let's say we hit just the hull for the hell of it. What's the armor of the Tiger tank?
Is that a -3?
-3. Would that be an ineffective or effective shot?
I'll give you an acquisition counter.
Okay. What happens if the unit were crew exposed?
Oh, yeah, if you got a turret hit, you could shock him.
Well, there's that. But anybody else have a clue of what might the high explosive round do when I hit the Tiger tank?
Well, there is a collateral attack. Yeah, it is a general collateral attack.
General collateral attack. So, can you explain the collateral attack, Mark?
All right. So if you're right, so in this particular case, you're firing HE. You can affect multiple targets in the particular location. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Unfortunately, I haven't used it very often, so I'm not going to say that I am an actual honest to God expert on collateral. But
okay. So what that does, I'll help you out, Mark.
Yeah,
so what we're looking at here, gentlemen, what we're focusing on is
7.12.
We can't touch the Tiger tank, right? But we fired our machine guns on all the guys that were crew exposed, right? So they're vulnerable to machine guns. If we fire a high explosive round, hit the tank, it will blow the tank out. Hey, Bull. It won't do anything to the tank, but because the HE round allows for a general collateral attack, the high explosive round will attack the CE crew with whatever caliber weapon you have. So we have a 76 caliber gun, right? So that is on the 12 chart. So if we were to hit that 88 tank with a high explosive round right now, it would hit, if we hit the tank, because it's easier to hit the tank. It's easier to hit the tank than infantry, correct? Tanks are essentially much easier to hit than infantry. So we hit the tank, the round explodes, nothing happens to the tank, but because the crew is exposed, then it becomes vulnerable to that explosion. So essentially we'll get a 12+2 dice roll on the crew. Won't scratch the tank at all, but we could possibly stun the crew. So that's another thing that you could think about. If you're facing a vehicle that you can't scratch, if he goes CE and you have high explosive capabilities or machine guns like we used last turn, you can try to take that infantry out. +2 is a good modifier. A lot of ASLers, all they do is default button up by default. My dice are crap. I like to go CE. Unfortunately, we can't because we're Russian. But if I'm playing the Americans or whatever, I really want to go CE because it seems like you're always missing the to hit by 1. And so if you're at range, if you're safe enough, you know, essentially you're in a wooden building anyway. Your morale level is 8. Even if you're dealing with a bunch of green or conscript units on your side, your morale is 8. So if they want to shoot at you at long range, now, you know, they might not be shooting at your infantry. It is taking a risk. It is a valuable piece, but you know, you got to weigh that. Obviously, you don't want to drive in the middle of 15 squads with your CE. They're just going to blast you. I mean, obviously, but if you're at decent range, you know, he took a couple of shots from us, just bounced off. You know, 1+2, 2+2, whatever. he ignores them. You know, we got to roll super low, but the CE can be a benefit, but it is a risk that you take. So the point I was trying to make, you know, long-winded, is even though the tigers are immune to our pretty much immune, other than the snake eyes and a critical hit, we can also target him with a HE round. Won't scratch your tank, but it will have a potential impact on the infantry.
So let's do, just kind of go through the mechanics. I'm looking at the rule. It's 7.12 on page 28 of the SK4 rules. So it says an attack using the VTT that hits an AFV but does not destroy, shock, or stun. It may also affect the crew collaterally.
Right.
But then it goes, using the same original effects dice roll that resolve the attack versus the AFV.
Right.
Make another attack versus the crew using the IST fire bullet. So do you roll again, or you take the roll that you had for the to kill?
It will be the to kill roll. So, but you'll need to roll to hit first, right? So you have to hit the tank, right? And then you roll to kill. The kill's not gonna do anything to the tank. So if we roll a hit, we hit him, and then we roll like a 5, right? Well, 5 with our to kill of 7, that's not gonna scratch it. But you apply the 5 on the 12 chart, which would be and then you add 2 because he is crew exposed and he is a +2 dice roll modifier for that position. So that would be a 7 on the 12 chart, which would be a 1 morale check. Unfortunately, he has 9 morale. Then he would roll a 1 morale check. If we were to fail that morale check, then he would be stunned. He would have to button up, and he'd be screwed for that turn, that player turn. And so, for all intents and purposes, he wouldn't be able to fire. And then after that, he would have a +1 to hit modifier. It's not that big, but it can make a difference later in the long run. But
that's the infantry target types too that you use?
No. You cannot target. You cannot. And here's gets a good question. Collateral attacks are based upon what you try to fire at. So if you can't target it with an infantry target type because it's not infantry. It's just a crew.
Okay.
So you have to target the tank.
But
right?
You use HE and the vehicle target type.
Right. HE vehicle target type. You just have the ammo type. So when the HE explodes, boom. You know, the explosion happens, and you know the same thing will happen if you fire AP, but the AP is much less effective. I don't even think it has the AP equivalency here. I'm not sure, but the HE is what you would want to use.
Can you do an area target attack?
You could do an area target attack, correct, and that would be the entire area, and that has a separate chart, right? So area target type.
It halves it then.
You're right, and then it halves the fire. So that would be what? What would the resolution there be for area target type?
On the 6.
6. A 6 + 2. It'd be the same thing.
Yeah.
It might potentially be.
This could be useful if if you're going against a tiger that you got low odds of taking out without swimming it. You might take a HE shot, hope to stun the crew, and use your other tanks then to swarm that tiger.
Yes.
Without fear of him shooting at you.
Yeah, he can't do squat then. He can't do squat. So, although this tiger in the bottom has got 3 Panzer IV surrounding him, he's not. But what it does is it takes that gun out of the equation for that player turn. And the next player turn, he'd flip it back over, and then he'd be stunned. Well, he'd be. You'll see the CE +1. Where's the stun counter? You've got the little stun here. And then what you do is you flip it. So what happens if he stuns? If he stuns, it will pop. You place a stun counter on him, and you notice the red. What does the red mean? What's the red counter mean?
Goes away after close combat.
Oops. Yeah, let me flip that out. Yeah, it will go away, or you would flip it in this case. And you see right there, it says +1. It'll be +1 to hit, morale checks, task checks. You know, if you fight to have a close combat overrun, lots of bad things when you're stunned. So when he fires to hit, he'll be +1. He can go CE again, but he's still +1 to hit. But his morale checks will be +1. So lots of bad things on the stun. So very important counter, very important concept to get involved.
For a collateral attack, if you say somehow get a K result or a KIA, does that still apply to the crew?
That still applies to the crew. The K or KIA, I believe, will put the big stun on him. And what that will do, if I recall correctly, again, I'm not sure how it would go, and that would be the big. There's a difference between the capitalized stun and the little itty bitty stun. The capitalized stun is like the commander took a shot, and so what you'll do then is then he'll be subject to recall. It's like the commander died, you know, you blew half his body off, and the guy says, "Okay, we're done, we're out of here," and they're out. A stun just means he's like failed a morale check. He's kind of quote broken or pinned or what have you. Actually, he's not pinned. Pinned is a different status. He took a good hit. And so they're going to be out of it for a while, and then he, quote, rallies, and then comes back, but he's +1. But the capitalized stun, which I believe was where the K is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm looking at 7.10 on the, with shock. It looks like if you get a K result, it's a shock rather than a stun.
Oh, no. That's a little different. That's a little different. We're talking directly on the CE crew. And we'll talk about that resolution in just a second. So on page 28, upper left-hand corner, first complete paragraph, recall also occurs when a CE-AFE suffers a KKIA result on the IFT or rolls an original 12 on a morale check. So if we got if we fired HE on this tank, and we got like a chintzy normal morale check on this guy, right? And he's got a morale level 9 because he's on the backside of his counter. Show info, morale level 9, he's bad. And if he rolls a GAX of 12, it's like, quote, casualty reduction, and then it's like the commander took a hit, and then he's recalled instead of stunned. So, but on the, what you're referencing on the to kill charts, I think those are the to kill charts, AFE destruction table. So the final effects dice roll, a lot of that will be the K and the KIA is pretty much when they're subject to area target type, like mortars. Mortars can be very effective against vehicles. And so if the mortar, they have to roll really low. It's sort of like you'll get lots of shots, but if your mortar shots fire on your vehicles, they roll on the IFT table for resolution, and then they'll have to roll a K or KIA for a result. Most of the time it's going to be a K. But so what'll happen then is they'll be immobilized or shocked instead. And then the same thing with the HE. The HE, same thing. HE 1 greater than. So a lot of times your mortars will do damage to tanks like essentially on a 4 or 5, depending on if they're open top, or I think if they have low armor. I think if all the armor I'm not sure if they incorporates the armor factors there. But they will. It's very effective. Mortars against vehicles. You know, when you look at the chart, you roll it out, and you see what because mortars need like 7s to hit, right? I mean, and they got rate of fire 3, so you're you know, you're dropping mortars like crazy. If you look on the let's say a American 60mm mortar, he'll essentially attack on the 4 chart, right? So K2 is a snake eyes, right? So I mean, it's one greater than the final to kill or K number is a possible immobilization or shock. So at that point, I mean, you're shocking tanks on a 3, on a subsequent roll of 3, or immobilizing them, and that could be huge. And that could be really huge. Well, actually, area target type is actually different. Sorry, area target type is on the right-hand side. Direct fires and area target type is the 2. Actually, they're pretty much the same until the last one. So, very effective, your mortars against slightly lightly armored vehicles. Oh yeah, there's this use original infantry dice roll for hit location. If all armor factors are less than or equal to 4, which are essentially your early war tanks, right? Then you subtract 1 from the to kill dice roll. All armor factors are greater than 8, then you add 1. So mortars against the Tiger, not quite as effective. But they're going to be slightly more effective against lesser tanks. Obviously, because it's like a small little mortar round, it's going to bounce off most of the time. So, but if you get lucky, because you're going to have a ton of shots, if you get lucky, then you'd be better off, you know, firing at a tank than say like an infantry unit in a wooden building or stone building with your mortar. just fire on the tank, because you'll have to roll super low anyway to get a resolution on it. You might as well try to blow up the tank. So, because the tank has no modifiers. If I hit the tank with my mortar, I just roll on the chart. If I roll snake eyes or one above it, since it's a HE, right, then it's going to be a stunned or immobilized, or shocked or immobilized. If I roll, against an infantry unit in a building or stone building, I'm going to be adding 2 or 3 to it. So it's either essentially a two quote even against a tank, or 2 + 3 against another infantry unit. And guess what? You need to roll snake eyes or a 3 against that infantry unit anyway. So which would you rather take out, the infantry or the tank? You'll have to roll the same to get an effect in those high defensible positions. So woods, obviously, you probably want to blow up the infantry. It's going to be easier to damage the infantry. So, so even though the Tiger is invulnerable to our AP rounds, he is vulnerable to HE rounds simply because he's crew exposed. If he buttons up, then pretty much he's good to go. To be honest with you, we really can't do much other than just flank him. That's about all we can do at that point. So a very interesting concept that kind of rolls off of John's APCR discovery from during this last week. So very cool. So with that, gentlemen, anybody that has any questions from last week, or like John, maybe they discovered something this week that we didn't cover or that we may have gotten wrong, this would be a great time. This is really like the intro, kind of like a refresh our minds. Any questions on motion? Any questions on? Oh yeah, I'll go over the motion, moving and nonstop sort of definitions. I hope I'll get those do those well. So first of all, we'll take questions or clarifications if anybody has any.
I've got one thing. If anybody wants to take a look at what I wrote up on this shot that Jim B took last week, I posted it to the, where did I post it? To the ALSK questions channel on this server, and it basically just showed some screenshots of what was going on. I wasn't able to listen to that live. I had a very interesting last Tuesday. I won't go bore you with the details right now, but long story short, I listened to the video replay, and long story short, Jim got a hit on that thing. It was a turret hit, and so I thought it would have been interesting to see if it resolved.
Yeah, that would be good. See, John, you cost us a kill. If you were here last week, that would have been a kill. You said, Stu, what the hell are you doing that for? Why are you trying to lead your crews astray? So, but yeah, it's very, very, very key concept. It's very, very, very subtle, I believe. Normally you would think APCR is better. In this case, it's the same. So we essentially took a -1 when we didn't need to. And again, that kind of goes into the situation. If we were CE, if we could fire CE, that would have been a hit. So every 1 + 1 counts. And that's why for me, I like to keep my tank CE as long as possible until I think that, it's going to hit the fan, and then I got to button up. But risk versus reward, gentlemen. That's all I got to say. If you love driving around your tank CE, you're going to be stunned more often. But hey, if that's one more attack that he's taking off of your infantry in that particular round that you need to assault on, maybe that's just as effective. Maybe that's just as effective. I don't know. It depends on the situation, as everything does in Squad Leader. So, anybody else have any comments or questions before we get started and continue this? Did you guys want to continue this turn now, or maybe you had something during, and it's only 6 o'clock now. I'd like to, a turn will take about an hour. If you want to go over something that happened in one of your games, maybe a crazy routing situation or something like that off of the side, before we get into the game, or maybe after the turn, if you wanted to do something like that right after the turn, we can do that as well. I don't want to exclude those other learning opportunities if you have a quick question, and then we'll kind of get into this and then generate more questions as well. So it's all up to you guys, whichever you want to do.
No, Stu, I've got one thing I could bring up that I had, it was kind of a question I had posed on the ASL starter kit page and on the Discord channel about kind of the mechanics and nuance of smoke placement and how to do that properly.
Okay, go ahead and pop it up, and then we'll pop on you, and then we'll scoot back. Because smoke placement and usage of smoke is very important in ASL. Very important.
Okay.
It's essentially you're giving all your units like a stone or wooden building, depending on where you place it.
Yeah. So you can go ahead and sync with me. This is from Simple Equation. All right. So this was just sort of a nuance of where I'd always been playing a gentleman's game kind of thing, and it's like, well, I'm going to lay smoke, and the guy's like, all right, and you're rolling things. So I was playing one player, and we had a discussion about, a couple different players on different scenarios with smoke. So what I've come to realize the best way of, for all concerned players in doing a smoke is the first thing you need to do. I basically had this unit in here, the squad was going to lay smoke in Y2. That's what my intent was.
Okay.
So the first thing that I'm going to start doing from now on is I'm first going to declare whether or not I'm using assault movement before I do anything.
Correct.
Makes sense.
So because in the past I just like, well, I'm going to lay smoke in Y2. I either do or don't, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to assault move in hex whatever.
Correct.
But if I succeed or fail either way, before I actually move into a hex, he can defensive fire, and whether or not I had declared assault movement obviously will make a difference.
Yes.
So that's point number one. So declaring assault movement before stating I'm going to lay smoke, you need to do that.
Yes.
So then there was a question about when he can actually fire on me in the act of laying smoke. Okay. So one player I was going against said, well, wait, I get the option of shooting at you right now before you roll. And I didn't really think about it that much. But after further thought, it was, well, it can't shoot at me until I actually expend the movement points.
Right.
So until I roll and either successfully or unsuccessfully lay the smoke, he can't defensive fire.
Correct.
So those were two little kind of minor things, depending on who I was playing, sort of looked at things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So, and then, and the thing about declaring assault movement, like everybody knows, so I had rolled, I think a 1 or a 2. I put the smoke there, and I had declared assault movement. So obviously all know that either I can't move, or if I'm going to move, I can't move into where the smoke is. So.
Well, you can and you can't.
I cannot.
It depends.
Well, I take that back. I could move if the leader goes with him.
Correct, because you'll have 6 movement factors in that case. But yes,
right.
If you wanted to move the leaders independent, then that would be different.
Yeah, but I had no intent of going into that hex because you can see he's got a heavy machine gun right there and everything.
Right.
So that was just a little kind of a minor thing. Just wanted to share with everybody, in particular, the declaring the assault movement before declaring laying the smoke. I think that's a nice habit I'm going to get into now. From now on, when I do smokes.
Right. But you don't always. Tell me why you wouldn't want to. In this situation, it might be a little different. So tell me why you wouldn't want to declare assault move in your attempt at this point right here. Let's say the leader was not there. Leader's gone. He's like over here with this guy.
Well, because if you get it, then you want to be able to move.
Right. Now, where could he move to if he did not assault move?
Well, I could move into the smoke hex,
right,
or into another building, something like that. I'd have that 2 movement factor.
Right. So it all depends on what you want to do with the squad. If you don't intend the squad to move there, and then you're just using that for other units to move, because like this guy's got a medium machine gun, he's pretty much the central linchpin of, let's say, of a defense or whatever like that. He could just be throwing the smoke out for everyone else to advance, and he's just going to stick there the whole time. In that case, just go ahead, assault move. Yeah, if you're don't intend to move him, or especially into the smoke, then declare assault move. Now, if you are to, let's say you were in a
Well,
situation.
let me just throw in. So one of the two reasons I wanted to do assault move, well, in particular, I was planning on moving him, and I was going to move him at Y1.
Okay.
So I did not want to be moving in the open,
Right.
Without, I didn't want non-assault move. I didn't want that -2 factor on me.
Right.
So one way or the other, whether or not I got that smoke, I was going to execute assault move.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's usually when you forget to say assault move, is you're thinking ahead whether I'm going to plop the smoke and then assault move out. It's just a habit to get into, and once you use that, depending on how friendly a game it is, it's just a good habit to make sure that you declare the assault move, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine on that. Now, yes, in terms of what you were saying with in terms of what's the residual? Who's
I don't know. Somebody's doing a bunch of stuff here.
is that? Who's moving a bunch of stuff around, guys? Yeah. So in terms of defensive fire, yes, you have to finish the action of whatever you're doing with those movement factors or movement points before anything else happens. So if he fires on you before you drop smoke, I mean, like you said, logically, I need to be able to drop the smoke first before you fire, because at that point I'm not expending movement factors. It's not you get to do, whatever. And that's the difference in terms of, when you drop smoke, it is a separate movement factor expenditure than actually moving. So if you drop smoke there, you get shot on, and if you move here, then you get shot on. Two separate expenditures. So you can't drop smoke and move to be the same thing. You drop, expend 2 or 1 if it's in your own hex. You expend 2. Yeah, a lot of guys think that they could fire before you perform that action. So it's the same sort of thing. It's the same sort of thing as saying, well, you're going to prep fire. Well, I'm going to defensive fire before you prep fire. In anticipation of you doing that. It's the same sort of logic. It has to follow progression of actions. If he breaks you, then you obviously didn't expend the movement factors, and then he couldn't fire on you. So yeah, a lot of guys get that wrong, but you are correct. You have to complete the action before you commit the rest of the activity. Same thing with like if you had a demo charge. If you want to move in there for 2 for the demo charge, and then throw the demo charge. Now the demo charge is slightly different in that.
Yeah, that was going to be that was going to be my point.
Yeah, the demo charge is slightly different.
Yes.
Where you
in the sense that, the action is done and then defensive fire takes place, but demo charges are an exception to that.
Right.
And they're specifically listed as an exception to that.
Right, and exactly right. Specifically listed in the rules, and it's very clear that you have to survive all fire and not be pinned. If you are pinned, you cannot place it. So that is one of the few exceptions in the rules where you don't get to complete your action. You essentially have to state the action at that point. So, and demo charges earn starter kits. So that might be where a lot of people are getting confused at. And but that's a common confusion that a lot of people have had in the past. They'll learn it, they'll kind of grow out of it, and it's just a learning, one other learning hurdle to come over, but it's pretty simple to get across. Pretty simple to get across. So I was going to bring something up on defensive fire that I learned this week based on that chart that we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, I want to do that. All right.
While he's pulling that up, I could do, there's one routing one. I just brought up a log file for 88s at Zon. I'm going through it quickly here to the part where there was an interesting route question. And Mark, if you got yours up when you're ready, we can just bail out of it.
Yep, okay, yep.
So give me a second, I'm almost there.
What is it? I'm sorry, Stu, when you want to go quickly through, you just hold, just page down?
Page down. You got to click the button once and then page down, and it will burn through it.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Oh, okay, cool. All right. still got a ways to go. So why don't you guys do your example first?
I'm
Okay.
almost there. All right. If go ahead and sync with me now.
Okay.
So this was the Germans' turn, and get to the route phase. He's prep
Okay.
firing. He's going to move here in a second. Full defensive fire. Okay, I think we are. Oh, now it's going to be an advancing fire. Sorry. Okay, route phase. So I've got this guy right here.
Yep.
Broke squad with the medium machine gun.
Right.
So his target hex by movement factors should be here.
Or
Well, could it be here?
Yeah.
I guess it could be there, right?
Right.
Okay. So I hadn't really thought about that, but the discussion was, going there, that's for 3 movement factor.
Yep.
I wanted to end up here so I could rally him with my 9-2 leader.
Okay.
And so in some answers that we got was, so this is my target hex. I'm not going to take interdiction. So I route, let me route this all together. So I go there for 4. And then technically I need to continue on until I get to my target hex. There is a way to get around that though, is I could declare that I'm going to low crawl there for my 1 hex. This is still my target hex, but I'm not breaking any of the rules.
Right.
So
now what's always in my mind, and I don't know if there's a limitation in the rule directly. It may not say it directly, but
it doesn't. There's nothing that specifically says that it has to be an open ground and a place that you could be interdicted. It just says you could declare low crawl and go 1 hex. Now, interestingly, though, in the rules, both in full ASL and SK, it does say upon reaching the nearest legal woods or building hex, not adjacent to an enemy unit, a routing unit must stop and end its route phase in that building, unless the unit can immediately enter another building or woods hex. So it seems to be a little contradictory that you have to go to your target hex if you've got the movement factors to it, but I moved into a building hex that wasn't my target hex, so then I have to stop in that building hex, even though I haven't gotten to my target hex.
no,
but,
you would if you don't use low crawl to go 09, you'd have to continue to N9.
Yeah.
You have to, because you can't. Otherwise, you just go like P8 or something like that. Pretty much
Right.
what that does is it stops you from going to a particular building and then continuing to route across the street to another building.
Right.
So you're always wanting to go to the closest cover. As long as you maintain the closest cover as identifying where you need to route to, you need to go there first and foremost. Once you reach that location, then you can stop. Then you have to stop unless you can then enter another location. Let's say N8. Let's say the units were not in 06 for some reason. This guy's not here. He's over here near LOS. Okay, this is simply because at that point, N9 would still be your destination, right?
Yeah.
And let's say you were at N8, and let's say this were the case. You're adjacent to him. Your destination would be N9, right? You could then move 2 to N9 and then continue to route because there are woods and buildings next to you, and then go 6 up there.
Right. Right.
You could do that. Would be a legal route, but just the low crawl. I've always kind of read on there, and they might not have the detail here. And I think you're right, where it doesn't mean that you have to be avoiding interdiction. It's just something that you can use to avoid interdiction.
Right. And,
So it says,
and in this case, I wanted to be able to stop into 09. So that's a way to sort of circumvent the requirement to continue on to N9 by just saying, okay, well, I'll just low crawl there, and that's N9 is still my target hex, but I've low crawled, so that's where I want to go.
Because
So while you're looking at that, I guess, one of the things I hadn't thought about, though, is if I did decide, though, I declared, I guess it would have been better to go to M8, perhaps take interdiction and go there. And I could stop there because he's a broken unit and I can stay there, right?
well, well, talk to me about that route. If you chose M8, how could you get there? Could you choose a different route?
Oh, actually, yeah, I could go here because that's still 2 hexes.
Oh, actually.
So yeah, I could just, I could go there and stop.
Where's there? I'm sorry.
Oh, I moved from 08 to N7. Am I not connected anymore?
Oh, no, you're connected.
No,
Somebody moved it. Somebody moved.
You're good.
Yeah. So as long as you're not adjacent to
A good order.
well, no, just an enemy unit. Yeah, good. Well, because the melee unit's not good order either.
Right.
I'm gonna make sure I get the verbiage correct on that. An unbroken known enemy unit.
Right.
That's the
unbroken.
difference. So you could be. So if there's a melee in M7, you could not stay there. So you could
Right.
go there, but
So actually, if I had been thinking about that, that's what I should have done. And hope to rally him at some later time, so he's already across the road and closer to my victory condition.
yeah, I really don't see any detail on the low crawl. It's got to be written somewhere else. I don't see it in the routing per se. It just says you can use low crawl. Interdiction occurs whenever a routing unit enters an open ground hex without using low crawl while a normal range of a unit unbroken enemy unit.
Yeah, I pulled out a part that says low crawl is a route of 1 hex that requires the entire movement factor allotment of the routing unit. A routing unit using low crawl cannot be interdicted. All other route provisions apply unchanged to low crawl.
Right.
Let's see, where did I pull that?
Yeah, so right, he's talking on page 16. It's literally the top first column of page 16. Again, all my page references are the official MMP SK4 download.
Right. I see it right now. Top left column.
Yep.
That
Yep,
requires the
that's
entire MF allowment. Right? Using the low crawl cannot be interdicted. All other route you provision to change the uncrawl. Okay, must move to the nearest. You are moving towards it. May route towards it in which decreases the range. Right, so that appears to be legal then. I just want, because it doesn't have any, sometimes they'll have a stipulation in the low crawl, like you can only use it if you're being interdicted, but it doesn't state that.
Right. And full ASL, it doesn't state it either.
Right. Right. So yeah, that could be a way to cheat it.
Yep. So just an interesting thing I came across with that.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big little kind of like a little sleaze. I mean, because you are in a low crawl mode. Now, if you're 1 hex further, then actually it doesn't matter. Right there, you can just route upwards. But yeah, if you were in a situation where you're further away, like right here, especially, well, right there would be your destination. But yeah, simply because you could low crawl up there, you can kind of cheat it.
Yep.
So you could be a man and jump the 9-2 out in the street and rally him out in the street.
Well, I mean,
So.
although if you don't mind if I move it, if he is here, then actually you can't route there because you are moving closer.
Yeah, closer to enemy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Yeah.
Right.
So in that case, yes, you could. At that point, Mark's right. You'd have to either low crawl there or take interdiction back to N9, and 09 would not be an option in this instance. Very slight difference of just simply knowing where your unit is. Yeah, that's a good point. And so just that 1 hex difference, can make, and that there again, that's an example of knowing that, okay, if I break in the open here, where can I go? You breaking here, is that really going to affect, what are you going to need to rally next phase when you jump up here?
Well, that's going to be 7, I think.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Oh, 8.
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7. He's going to come back.
Yeah, 7, no big deal. So even if you take a
He
chance
did.
running out here, you're going to be back with the 7 during his turn. Well, actually during your turn because he prep fired.
Right.
But during his turn. So yeah, absolutely. So no harm, no foul almost, even if you were moving, he'd have to be still staring in the face of a 8 morale unit. Because simply because the 9-2 is so powerful in rallying those units. So that's
and that's why I wanted to go there.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good question. That's a good question.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah. So I guess right. The question there is the subtlety of low crawl and whether crawl requires you to go into an open ground hack.
Right.
And as I said, there's nothing. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, the way the sentence structure is it's a little odd because it does kind of give you that impression, but it also doesn't give you that impression.
Right.
I mean, it's weird. Yeah, it's like I mean, I tend to play it as low crawl. As you decide you're going to low crawl, and then you can just move 1 hex in any direction as long as you are moving closer to your destination.
Right.
Yeah,
and
that. Certainly, and moving up there would certainly be moving closer to your destination, which would be if you declared this is your destination.
Right.
If you declared that as your destination, then
Right.
But
and that makes and you'll see that distinction only when you'll have that variable movement factor expenditures because you're adjacent to this guy. Only when this one's going to cost a hell of a lot more than go over here will that kind of come up in the, if that were on ground level, there would be no question, right? You just route to him, and then you normally continue routing. So
there's a very unique type of situation.
Right. But say your 9-2 leader were back here, right? You could still route through that location because you can still go to here at the end of the route phase.
Right.
So very 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 unique. Kind of quirky. And can be confusing at times because some guy says, well, yeah, you didn't make your destination, this, that, the other, but you low crawled, and a myriad of different rules kind of come into play at that point. So yeah, that seems very legal. Very good deal. Very cool. All right, Mark, you got yours up and running?
I'm going to load up my game, and then I guess everybody's going to sync with me.
Yes.
We're going to be in a very different situation.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Yeah, welcome to the jungle, people.
Welcome to the sleepy. Oh my god. All right.
So I understand that probably I don't know whether a lot of you have done any PTO stuff, but I have been fortunate enough to be playing through all of the SK4 scenarios with a gentleman in Australia. And the only disadvantage is I have to wake up at 7 a.m. On Saturday. So, and for him, that's 9 p.m. his time. So it's kind of odd. But learning a lot of Pacific Theater, and so here we are. We're literally in the last turn of the game. The American has to have a majority of the building hexes. There are 9 building hexes right now. The American, I think, controls 7 of them, and the Japanese control 2, but that's not really what the point is about. So, okay, so for those of you, basically all these Japanese units here are going to start a bonsai charge. We're not going to go through the mechanics of it, but it's going to basically lead us to the defensive fire situation that I had a question about. So here we go. So dum. All right, so the Japanese are starting their bonsai. The American telling us the destination of the bonsai, and we start, and basically everybody starts firing. So, all right, and I think this is actually all right. So this, I think, is all right. So we're moving there.
Wow.
All right, yeah. This bonsai charge this bonsai charge was pretty bad for the Japanese, but it did in fact help me win the game, barely.
Good lord.
Wow.
Now, one thing in mind. Are you remembering that your morale level is 1 higher?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you're rolling 10s and 11s. I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yes. Yeah. It was not doing very well, but it was sucking in all of his firepower, which ended up being actually helpful. But what I'm going for here is, all right. Is this the attack that we're worried about right now? Okay, I think it might be. All right.
Is this the moving phase?
Okay. All right. So this was in fact it. All right. So if you notice right now in this text, so basically he's firing. I'm sorry. That's actually not quite it. That was this guy firing. That's where the 12 came from. So I got lucky there. So we're back right at the exact moment. All right. So I think this is the moment here. All right. So the question.
Hold on one second. Where'd your 12 residual firepower come from?
Where'd the 12 come from? Okay, the 12 came from these guys here.
Okay, they're just not marked. That's all. Okay, all right.
Not marked. Yeah, right. Yeah. So okay, so
right.
This is so now, literally right now. Okay, the actual units in the hex are going to fire on the 347 squad that's just moved into it.
Yeah, they have to.
Right, they have to. They're required by the rules. So the question that came up at this point is what is the actual firepower? Now you notice that the squad is marked as first fired, but the machine gun isn't because the machine gun retained rate.
Yeah, this is the question I was avoiding. But yeah, okay, this is fine.
Here we go.
Yeah, this is what I want to avoid. Yeah.
This is okay. So all right. So the American squad has to now. The American squad decided they were going to fire. Okay, my interpretation of the rule is, all right, so let's just assume the American squad is actually firing. Now, because it's subsequent first fire.
Okay, take it slow because this is not easy. This is going to tweak. You're just going to tweak your minds.
All right, so the American squad decides he's going to subsequent first fire.
Correct.
Okay, because he is subsequent first firing, he has to decide whether he's going to fire the machine gun that he possesses or not. He may choose not to, but if he decides not to, he sacrifices using the machine gun for that subsequent first fire at all. The machine gun is marked as final fired along with the squad. So he decides, all right, I'm going to fire the machine gun, obviously. So the question is the machine gun is not marked with first fire. However, the unit firing it is under first fire. So does the machine gun become tripled for triple point blank fire, or is it triple and halved because the unit firing it is under subsequent first fire? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me take some counters here. I'm gonna clone this.
Right ahead. Yeah.
Obviously, he's not using the LMG because it's. Why wouldn't he use the LMG, gentlemen? Tell me why the American unit is not firing the LMG in that attack.
Well, he's firing the HMG. I mean, the MMG.
Right.
But no, the LMG is the Japanese. It's Japanese. Sorry, the counters are enslaved with the wrong spot.
Okay. Yeah. And this is why you don't never put your counters below your units for possession. Huge distinction. Okay. So we've got the situation here. Let me cruise it off a little bit off to the top. So I'm going to clone this again. And this is exactly what I was going to go over. Okay. So you've got these two separate situations here. And I literally learned this like yesterday. In ASL, now I'm not sure if the verbiage is in SK. I had 100 other projects I was doing in ASL. Again, what you're doing is you are final protective firing. Well, essentially subsequent first firing, right? So
yes.
He's going to subsequent first fire, and if you go on your subsequent first fire chart, what that will do is it will final fire everything there. Everything will be marked with final fire. Okay?
Yep.
Everything will be marked with final fire. So in this instance on the left-hand side, the squad is at half firepower. Since he is first fired, anything he fires in a fire group will then also have to be under those restrictions of first fired. If he, let's say he first fired, like we went before, if he first fired his inherent here, then he's free to fire his machine gun over here. And then he could fire them, he can't combine, I guess you could combine them for subsequent first fire there. But in this case, he must fire all or forfeit. So what that will do is it will put the machine gun under final fire penalties. Okay? So in this case, triple it and halved for everything. So that'll be a 20, or actually it'll be a 30 and a half, so it'll be a 15 plus whatever modifiers. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
On the situation over here, simply because the 667 has not used his inherent firepower, and this is very subtle. The 667 has not exhausted his firepower. The MMG could. So theoretically, if he had another weapon, he could fire this separately, right? He could fire this MMG separately at full firepower. That's kind of what we're looking at there. So if this were the case, right, the 667 would be tripled but not halved, and the first fire and the machine gun here would be then sustained fire, would be subject to sustained fire penalties because it was already marked with a first fire counter. The squad had not been marked, and he will obviously at that point be final fired, but he will not be subject to the halving because he was not marked with a first fire marker. As conversely, in the first case where Mark has it here, since the squad is marked with a first fire marker, confusing as hell, then when he subsequent first fires, everything, he either uses everything or doesn't use it, but then it is subject to first fire or subsequent first fire penalties. Because he's subsequent first firing, the machine gun is not first firing, the squad is subsequent first firing. He has to use the machine guns or forfeit them. In the case up here, he still has the ability to fire inherent, so he could technically first fire, so therefore his firepower isn't halved, but the machine guns is. Very confusing, and I'm still sorting it out myself, but that's the ASL rule. I haven't read through the SK rules yet. Literally, this was like last night at 3 a.m. is where, or this morning at 3 a.m. is where I was firing this. I was talking with Klaus about this one, and I asked for references and things like that. It was on Game Squad or something like that. This literal question was directly on Game Squad last night. I'm not sure if Mark generated or not, but from what I understand from the conversation, I just listened to Klaus because he clarifies things 99% of the time in the rules. In the first case, if the squad is first fired and he decides to combine everything is subject to sustained fire penalties. In this case, he's not marked with a first fire, so therefore, you know, he can forego. Actually, in this case, he has to fire them, but he is not first fired, and so his firepower will not be reduced, but the machine guns will be, because the machine gun is subject to first sustained fire penalties. Very, very, very subtle, very subtle. And again, I'll look into this more to make sure that clarification is correct. But I just learned this last night after 30 years. So don't think that you won't be learning something new every day. These are both these questions we had, the routing questions, the low crawl up in the 4 movement factor house, very twisted concept to wrap your head around. This is even the same thing. If you can understand this sort of concept, all of the rest of the first fire and final fire will be simple, because this is it's semi-intuitive, but then again, you know, everyone likes to simplify things, you know, and so, but this is what I understand.
Well, as I said, I mean, yeah, interestingly enough, yeah, I initially said, right, the machine gun has to be sustained, right, is under sustained fire penalties at that moment,
Right.
because the squad firing it is first fired, and that point, and also because it always says when it talks about subsequent first firing, it basically says like a defender infantry unit,
Right.
and a defender infantry unit. So
Right.
it's not like a machine gun can fire, can fire subsequent first fire.
Right.
It doesn't fire it on its own. Okay.
Right.
The infantry unit is the one that's declaring I am subsequent first firing.
Correct. Yes.
And then the squad decides, or the half squad or whatever, the unit decides what else I want to bring into the attack, basically, at that point. And and so that's always been kind of my understanding of it. Now, again, my opponent decided, no, he was insisting that, the machine gun was not halved. So he thought it was a 20 attack. It didn't end up making any real difference because we literally ended up rolling a 7, which on both the 16 and 20 is a 2 morale check. So it was really one of the weird things where it didn't end up making any difference. But I did want to kind of bring it up. So yeah, my understanding, as I said, it does agree with yours, Stu, that it would be, that you would triple and halve the entire attack.
Right.
And so it would be 16. So it would actually end up being 15. It'd be a 12.
Right.
It'd be a 12 plus 1, which actually would have made a difference. I think that would have been a 1 morale check, as opposed to 2 morale check.
So again, gentlemen, just by it's exactly what Mark stated there. Machine guns do not theoretically subsequent first fire. Machine guns undergo sustained fire, which is firing the second time, right?
Yeah.
And they could fire a third time and so on and so forth. But that firing is based upon its owning unit. The owning unit's condition is what we're looking at here. You've got 2 different conditions. This guy's already first fired. He, again, if that unit didn't enter his hex, could he fire the MMG somewhere else with full firepower? Yeah. Yeah, that's his normal capabilities as a Norman. Then they would both be under first fire, assuming he doesn't lose rate of fire. That's normal ASL, right? When you come into a situation where he fired the MMG first, he is not subject to any subsequent first fire penalties. So therefore, he would be tripled here and halved here because, again, the machine gun is now marked with first fire. If it fires again, it's subject to sustained fire penalties. Over here, because the infantry unit, as Mark points out, very subtle distinction. You'll see this a lot. The infantry unit fired. If he wants a subsequent first fire, he gives up or has to use the MMGs under his command or possession as sustained fire or forfeit their use. So very, very, very big distinction between these two setups entering that hex. So
and to continue the analogy, though, is when you go to final protective fire, you have no choice with the machine guns.
Correct.
You have to use them.
right, the next step, because when the 347 enters that hex, the 667 fires on it, and he expends 2 movement factors entering that hex. So he could subsequent fist fire / sustain fire the MMG, and then fire again as final protective fire, and then again subject the MMG to sustained fire penalties.
Right.
So this is huge. This comes up a lot in the Pacific Theater because there's a lot of this in Pacific. So getting this concept down allows you to understand and better defend against Japanese. In this case, maybe the American wanted to fire his MMG over here just to get the shot off because he knows he's going to be occupied. Spread the residual out. That's how you defend against the Japanese. You just blast every damn hex as much as possible. So everyone runs in. As they run in, you need their values, as damaged as possible. It takes 3 failed morale checks to break a Japanese unit. That's pretty silly. So you need to fire a lot. Simple as that. But this is This is exactly what I was trying to avoid in the beginning because of the confusion that this can add. So look at this during this next week, gentlemen. Watch the tape again at this point of the video, and therefore reflect upon it, reading the rules, look at other sources, ask other players how they would play it. Don't prompt them on it, ask them on this, and then give them our synopsis and try to explain kind of like what we went over here. So when you engage with them later on, you don't run into this problem here, because last turn, last movement phase, 4 firepower, if I roll 3 or 4, it makes a difference, and this happens. And this, at times, depending on who you're playing with, this can be very heated. This can get very heated.
Yeah, I mean, this is literally, as you said, this is literally the last turn, and yeah, and so and so as we said, like I was, I was like, all right, fine, I'll just play it your way, and I'll, and as I said, but I did want to bring it up as a question.
And that's what you got to be honest with you. That's what usually ends up is typically, I don't know, it becomes a difficult situation. At that point, you just got to go over the rules, sort of like the rules discussions like Steve and I have in our games that you see, that you might watch on the full ASL games that we have. We have lots of rules discussions in there. Sometimes we're wrong, sometimes we're right, and so on and so forth, but we try to discuss and hash out the rule. And sometimes we end up with the wrong answer because we don't look at something else, and we've done that before. But a lot of times we'll hash out the right answer and then continue. It's important to get it right, that way, the guy doesn't come back and say, you know what, you did screw up that shot, I would have won the game. The other guy says, well, you never know what you would have rolled. It gets in that sort of argument.
Right.
So you kind of want to avoid that, but rules discussions during the game are fine. Again, find them. Again, I haven't looked in the SK, so I want to dig into the SK rulebook to see how it kind of explains that. And I think Mark's hit it on the head. It talks about the infantry unit. The infantry unit's status is the importance in this example. The infantry unit's status, not the support weapons, but the infantry unit. Very important.
Yeah.
Wow,
so, so there you go. So I guess we were channeling the same thing. So
wow, my mind. Wow, that's crazy that you have the exact same. That is just crazy. Maybe you or your buddy generated that question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we ended up doing it. But yeah, as I said, I ended up yakking the roll and blah blah blah. So it was just, things look pretty dire, but they managed to draw just enough firepower away that I could jump into close combat in 3 of the buildings. We kind of keep moving in. This was the key right there. Throughout the entire game, that squad was hidden.
Oh.
And he literally I spent like 4 turns sweating bullets. He literally, like, every time he moved the unit, they moved around it.
Oh.
It's like, I don't know what it was, but literally, route phase of turn 6, I suddenly say, hi, I'm here. This guy now has to route. Okay.
Oh, then you advance. Oh my God. Yeah.
And leaves just a leader there that this guy dies into close combat. This guy ends up getting really lucky, even though he gets ambushed, because the Americans in this scenario are at the end of their rope, because that's the name of the scenario. Yeah. They get +1 because they're CX. He literally roll, even though he ambushes me, he rolls high enough that he doesn't affect me, and then I roll a 2, and I take him out. Wow. I rolled 8 guys, take him out, and that was it. So I literally got like 5 buildings and won the game. So
now, gentlemen, if you remember the scenario that John was playing with, I think with just the other day with the OBA, and we were talking about HIP units and SK that's not in that. Yeah. This is exactly the concept that I was talking about. This guy was HIP, right? And this guy was broken here. So in this sort of situation, he keeps him HIP, and at the end of the game, he pops out and says, ooga booga, now your ass has got a route. And then so he's gone here, and at least the American was smart enough to say, I can't leave that building, I've got to take it, and then he could advance in and not take any fire from these guys, and Japanese just do their job in close combat. That's just what they do.
Yep.
And so
yeah.
that's the danger. When I looked at scenarios, like, wow, all you have to do, like the half squads that in John's game, if you can hide them well enough and move them at the last turn, it might be enough. But it's you really don't have a lot of units in that one here. Here the Japanese probably have enough. But this is exactly the strength of a hidden unit. It didn't do anything the entire game but capture the last victory point. Anything. That's his whole job, was to stay there and cheat the Americans. So when you're the Americans here, you do like Planet of the Apes. You smack the grass to keep the humans from moving, you know. So you'll find all the hidden units as you walk through and advance through those locations to make sure that this doesn't happen 100% of the time. So very good lesson. Very, very intense end game. Very intense question. Very good question. Yeah, that's exactly the question I was trying to avoid. All right. So with that, gentlemen, you want to blow up some tanks?
Let's blow up some tanks.
We came here to blow up some tanks. These are very, very hardcore questions. These are, I like these. They're very hardcore questions. Thanks for joining us for the first part of the SK session we had this week. Brilliant questions, brilliant concerns, great discussion. If you're interested in part 2, the Clash of Borisovka, continuing that game, you'll see some totally armor action in that one. Lots of armor moving. We're blowing tanks up. We'll see you then. Start up your tanks and let's roll out.